Good evening, and thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm New York City Councilman Chaim, and you're listening to Chaim on the Radio. I'm live here in the studio tonight, joined by my social distance co-host, Dr. Faye Zakheim, who is with us live via phone, and we are filling in tonight for Zev Brenner on Talkline Communications Network. Good evening, Dr. Faye.
Hi, Chaim. Hi, Councilman Deitz. How are you?
Good, pretty good. How you doing? How was your week?
My week was good, but I'm actually looking forward to Shabbat. I'm coming back to Brooklyn.
Excellent. Are you coming this weekend?
I am. I'll be there tomorrow night.
Oh, beautiful. Great. Great to have you back. Brooklyn misses you.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Oh, good. So you're here just in time.
But safe. A beautiful Friday night dinner.
Beautiful. Looking forward. It's supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be.
And how was your week, Councilman?
Good. Preparing for a rally this coming Sunday. So we're going to do a special rally. It's going to be, we're going to have a special gift for our mayor. Yeah,
wow,
gift.
Tell us more.
A nice gift. It's a surprise. It's a surprise. Maybe I'll tell you. We're actually having a rally against a congregate shelter that the mayor is opening up right here in our district at 100 Neptune Avenue, and this is part of his initiative back in 2017 that's called Turning the Tide. And I have been very involved with homelessness, with people who are street homeless for the last 6.5 years. And one thing I know is that when you have a congregate shelter where you have anywhere between 15 and 17 people living in one room, and the city hands off those shelters to developers and to non-for-profits, and where many have very, very few services that the people who are homeless need, who are sheltered there. And the fact is that most of the people who are sleeping on our streets would rather sleep in our streets than be in a shelter because they don't feel safe, not enough services, and that they feel more comfortable sleeping on the street. So by the mayor opening up these shelters all across the city, his plan is 90 shelters across the city. So now he's opening up another 20. And, I don't believe in those shelters because if people who are sleeping on the streets don't want to go into these shelters because they're not safe, why are we bullying them? We're spending millions of dollars and giving it into the pockets of developers. And when the mayor signs a lease now, 9 months before he's leaving office, and he's signing like a 4-year lease with another 4-year option, so it ties the hand of the next mayor, the next administration, of how he or she would like to deal with our homeless situation. So I have no problem if the mayor finds a building that's already constructed and signs a 9-month lease or a 12-month lease to take these people off the streets and let the next mayor have his or her vision on how they want to take care of the homeless population, because obviously this mayor has failed us. He has failed us, and I cannot stress how he failed our city.
Councilman, when I'm teaching at NYU, a lot of our students have to do field placements. So one of the field placements, one of the major ones, is working with the homeless population. During the winter, my students, they go down into the subway system to take the homeless people and take them into apartments. So you would think, wow, the weather is like 0 degrees, it's freezing cold, the students are going down there, the interns are going into the subway station. You would think that the homeless people would want to go with them. Do you know, literally, they had to drag them out of the subway station, put them into an apartment, drag them against their will into an apartment, and then what? You know what? The next morning, they weren't even in the apartments anymore. They were back in the subway stations again. So they're mentally ill. They didn't want to leave the 0 degrees of being in a subway station because they're mentally ill. They need someone to take care of their mental illness, not someone to take them into a luxury apartment where they don't want to be. And it happened all the time. They would be dragged out of the subway station, taken into an apartment, a beautiful apartment, and the next morning they were right back in the freezing cold weather again.
Wow. And that is a problem. There's not enough services for people who have mental illness. And so, people, this specific shelter that I'm having a rally in front of Gracie Mansion, this is for, in particular, the shelter opening up in our district. And I'm also inviting people from other areas in the city where the mayor is opening up shelters in their district where there's a lot of opposition. Now, what's important is that people who don't live in these areas now might say, why should I have to go out to these rallies? Why is it important? Let someone else fight. It's not my neighborhood. But guess what? When such a shelter comes into your neighborhood, you're going to want us to fight for you. So it's important for people to come out and send a message 9 months before he leaves office, to send a message to the mayor that he needs to treat our community and he needs to treat the homeless population with respect. And don't come up with your failed plans and just want to shelter and hide the homeless and stockpile them in rooms because you want to walk away to say, look, I took people off the streets. Because as soon as they're in there, like you said, Faye, they're going to be walking right out. And you have to also remember when the rent moratorium ends in May and people start becoming evicted, there could be another 60,000 people who are homeless. So we need to tackle this the right way, and the answer is to have permanent housing with wraparound supportive services to make sure these people have the right services and not to hand them off to developers and to non-for-profits who are not helping this homeless population properly. So there's a lot to talk about, but I don't want to waste too much time on this. But I just want to ask...
Councilman, so just tell us where the rally is. Tell us where to go.
So it's this Sunday. I was going to say it's this Sunday, which is March 7th, 1 p.m. sharp, in front of Gracie Mansion. That's in Manhattan, East End Avenue and East 88th Street. Dress warmly. It's supposed to be a little chilly outside. It won't be freezing, but it's going to be chilly. So please, anyone listening, and you have a stake in our community, and you have a vision, the same vision as me, that this mayor is incompetent, and we cannot allow him to do whatever he wants to destroy our city. So we need to come out to send him a message, to send him a strong message. So once
I will
again,
be there on Sunday, Councilman. I will be there 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock
at Gracie Square
this Sunday, Gracie Mansion.
Yeah.
And that's Manhattan, East End Avenue and East 88th Street. I don't think that the gyms are going to be open yet, so the mayor... I think the gyms, Tova's telling me the gyms will be open, so maybe the mayor's not going to be at Gracie Mansion. He might be at the gym. But we'll find him. Don't worry about it.
We'll be there.
We'll find him. If not this Sunday, we'll find him next Sunday. So we have a very special program tonight. We have a very special guest. So this evening, we are pleased to welcome Congressman Nicole Malliotakis, who took office in January of 2021, and she represents Staten Island and parts of southern Brooklyn. Yes, this district, this congressional district, goes across the toll bridge, and those tolls are pretty high, so I feel bad for her because when she comes into Brooklyn, she has to pay that toll, as well as going back to Staten Island. And Congressman Malliotakis is a rare voice of reason in New York City politics. And although we are on opposite sides of the aisle, which means I am a registered Democrat and she is a Republican, we share a similar perspective on many things, some of which we will discuss tonight with Congressmember Nicole Malliotakis. You are live on the air, and thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Chaim. Thank you so much, and thank you for the work you're doing in the City Council. And I know you and I are in some similar situations. Always trying to fight for what's right for New York City and for the taxpayers and the hardworking people of our community who just want a fair shake from government.
I have heard you fighting, and I'll tell you something, you really impressed me. And you have made waves this week with your floor speech yesterday in the House, and you introduced your bill and the Right to Remain Safe Act. And, that's very uncommon to many Democrats, many of my colleagues here in the City Council, because they don't know what the Right to Remain Safe Act is. So can you tell our listeners about the bill and why it is so important right now?
Well, as you know, New York City defunded the police by $1 billion, 1/6 of the budget. Obviously, as a City Council member, you're aware when your colleagues did this. And this is something that's happening across cities across America, and we wanted to try to encourage them to not do this, and the only way we can encourage them to not do this is by somehow holding them accountable, responsible. And what my bill does is basically, holds these municipalities responsible should someone fall victim to a crime because they defunded the police. And really the idea here is to deter them from doing this and making sure that our police departments are fully funded, making sure that they do give the tools and the resources that they need to keep us safe. Unfortunately, yesterday, we saw the House Democrats pass legislation that would further tie the hands of our police department, but also implement a number of unfunded mandates that would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to police departments across the nation, which would mean that they would have to cut the police force that's on the street by thousands. And so, we put up an amendment yesterday, and the speech I was giving was not only talking about my bill, the Right to Remain Safe Act, but it was also just saying we want Congress to just send a simple message that we as a body do not support efforts to defund, to dismantle, to abolish our police force. We appreciate the men and women who serve our community, and unfortunately, Democrats couldn't even support that. And so it was very upsetting to many of us who said, look, if you're going to do all this stuff, at least make a clear effort to say to the world that we don't support defunding, dismantling. So we were disappointed with the outcome, but I think it was important that we had the legislators on record one way or the other, because you can't say that, you don't support defunding the police and then take these types of votes that actually strip resources.
Yeah, it's very troubling times. Even in the city council, when we voted in the budget last year, and I was one of the few that voted against the budget because of the defunding the NYPD by $1 billion. And it's very interesting how I actually wasn't the only one. We had a handful of members who voted against the budget, and half of us voted against the budget because we didn't want to see the NYPD being defunded, and we refused to vote for the budget. And another group of members voted against the budget because they felt that it didn't go far enough. $1 billion was not enough. They wanted $1.5 billion. And so there was two people from the left and the right, two different groups, who voted against the budget for two different reasons. And then you had those members who voted for the budget. And they live in neighborhoods, even like some of my colleagues live in neighborhoods where they support the NYPD. They support to be safe. You're hearing these stories constantly in the news, and how people are taking the trains, taking mass transit, and being killed, being beaten up. And how dare anyone come out to say, let's defund the NYPD? And it's scary. It's really scary, because some of my colleagues says, I don't want any cops in my district. I don't want cops. So I said, I would gladly take them. You don't want them? Just please tell our crazy mayor, and I'll gladly take these cops into my district. These guys work very hard. They work 24 hours. They're a cop 24 hours, 7 days a week. And what impresses me about you is that you stand up. You don't back down. And, we constantly get tweets against us from the liberals, really coming out saying, questioning us and saying how we don't want cops, they make things worse. No, we can't expect social workers to go on our trains and to respond to 911 calls. They need cops as well. I agree that we need mental health professionals to go on the trains, and as well as you need law enforcement. But so far I haven't even seen the mental health professionals that this administration is talking about. If you're going to say defund the police and we need mental health professionals, send them in. Let's see them. We don't see any mental health professionals on our subway systems. So it's all about pandering to those who just hate the cops. And that's what they do. They pander. They pander to these voters. And that's why it's so important that in our district, and we overlap in certain parts in southern Brooklyn, and it's important for the more conservative and the Republican constituents to come out en masse and to make sure that we send a message that we're going to elect the right person. You know, you got elected. Max Rose, you took him down. You're our Congressmember, and you sent a message. You sent a very clear message that people want our cops. They want to see the NYPD protecting us each and every day. You were also in the news this week talking about Governor Cuomo's ongoing series of scandals. So what is your opinion? Do you think he should resign?
Well, at first I just want to, because you made some really good points about our police. So it was really shocking about some of your colleagues that decided to vote against the budget, or for the budget, to strip funding from our police, was that they did it during a time where crime was rising. They already saw that shootings were rising and murders were rising and auto thefts were rising, and they still decided to cut resources from our police. And that, to me, I think is the most egregious act the city council has done. I mean, protecting our citizenry is the number one responsibility of government, and they failed to do that. And I think that they should be reliable for that. I think that they need to be held accountable, which is why I continue and you continue, and those others who truly believe that public safety is paramount, continue to advocate and support our police officers. So I thank you too, Councilman, for your advocacy on behalf of our NYPD and the great work that they do, because you do value what you value that public safety truly is the one thing, the most important thing that government should be providing. And I think that's the part of the problem with our city government, our state government right now, is that, and even our federal government, is that we are moving into areas where government shouldn't be meddling, instead of focusing on the very responsibilities that we have, right? So keeping people safe, making sure that the traffic's flowing, that the trains are running, that our children are getting quality education. These are the things that people expect from their government, not to enter all sorts of other areas, as Mayor de Blasio has done. He's increased the budget for our city significantly since entering the mayoralty. Mm-hmm. And yet we haven't gotten results. But he seems to try to want to go in all sorts of different areas. Now, with regard to the governor, look, I've been very critical from the spring, saying that the governor needs to be held accountable for misguided policies that put senior citizens in jeopardy. We now know that 15,000 senior citizens died, sadly, in nursing homes across the state of New York due to his executive order. And then we learned that he underreported those figures. In fact, just a little while ago, the Wall Street Journal came out with an exclusive with someone else within the administration saying that it was the governor and his team had pushed the Department of Health to underreport those numbers. So there's more cover-up that is coming out little by little. So this is on top of the previous cover-up that we learned that occurred because of his own chief of staff admitting to it. Then he was stonewalling the legislature, not giving answers for months, and now we know it's because he was trying to hide information from the Department of Justice. And then he was threatening Assemblyman Ron Kim, bullying a fellow colleague, a member of the state legislature, who simply spoke up because his own uncle died in a nursing home. So there's a lot that has happened here with the governor that I believe is reason for him to resign. And I also believe that, the sexual harassment stuff is bad. Those accusations are horrible. And, that just adds to the reason why I believe the governor should go. But I've called for the governor to resign probably about a month or two ago when we first started learning about the cover-up that occurred.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my tweet today, and there was a Daily News front cover, crocodile tears, picture of the governor. And the governor keeps saying, why are people coming down so hard on me? And my tweet was, I don't know why Governor Cuomo expects New Yorkers to back down and let him get away with this behavior. After all, isn't he the guy who spent 6 months reminding us that we are New York tough? So if we are New York tough, we're going to be tough on you, Mr. Governor. And if you're going to do something wrong, if you're going to go after women, if you are going to, and the fact is that people were talking about how people are dying in the nursing homes and screaming, and it fell on deaf ears because our governor, he ruled. He was with an iron fist. He tried to do everything to shut everyone down. And my district was in a red zone for quite a while, and we were the first ones, and we were in the red zone for quite a while, and I've been calling them every single day. And until I had a press conference, they closed up all the businesses. So I told the governor we're going to have a presser, and I put together about 15, 20 elected officials to come to my presser against the governor. And then when I sent it to their office, all of a sudden they changed it from a red zone to an orange zone. And this was because, he doesn't like bad press. But you know something? Bad press just followed him. And this governor needs to learn that we are humans, and you're not going to dictate to us of how we're going to live. And people need to understand, like even in my district, I have a very high COVID rate. And I have been begging, I have text messages sending the governor's chief of staff text messages since March. And she has not responded to me. Melissa DeRosa, she has not responded to me. I always have to speak to a lower level person in the governor's office when I ask them to send in masks, to send in equipment, to send in education, to have people come into the district, that I want to work with them to bring these numbers down, to re-educate people, to hand out safety equipment. And they haven't responded. Everything to them was like, no, it's our way or no way. And this is one reason. Yeah. This is one reason why I started becoming vocal against the governor since from the beginning of the pandemic, because they don't respond. How difficult it is when there are 9 zip codes out of a few hundred that have high COVID rates to send in the resources to those 9 zip codes that have the highest numbers at the beginning of the pandemic and control it. But the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing, and vice versa.
You're absolutely right. And we experienced similar issues in my district, and I can tell you from colleagues across the city that everyone sort of feels the same way, which is why the state legislature needs to immediately act and strip the governor of his executive powers. He has been abusive. He has abused these powers, as you say. He has had arbitrary restrictions. He discriminated against certain communities. Right now, New York City is being discriminated against, where we can only open at 35% capacity while everybody else is at 50% capacity for indoor dining. Everyone has been open at 50%, and we were closed the entire holiday season. And no indoor dining was allowed. This is an example of how the governor has used his authority to implement arbitrary restrictions. We saw what happened with the synagogues, the houses of worship. It was very offensive, and it was wrong what he had done. And it was, thankfully the groups stood up and they filed a lawsuit and they won the Supreme Court, and they were allowed to again practice their freedom of religion. And I think that was a very significant lawsuit, and I commend those who took action to make sure that their voices were heard and that this injustice was overturned. But really what the state legislature needs to do at this point, I've been saying they should have done this from months ago, but they need to actually strip the governor's powers and take back their authority as a co-equal branch of government and actually do their job and help us just get this economy reopened. Let's get the kids back in school. Let's make sure that we're vaccinating as quickly as possible. We are opening sites as supply becomes available, and that should be the number one priority right now. But I'm afraid all the stuff that is circling around the governor is becoming a distraction. Remember, this is now budget season in Albany. So, how are they going to get real fair negotiations going and having a real conversation when the governor is under this dark cloud of cover-up, of threatening, of sexual harassment, of conspiracy? There's a lot happening there right now, and that's why I think he needs to resign, allow Lieutenant Governor Hochul to take over and help lead the state through this crisis.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to tell listeners the call-in number here in the studio is 718-303-9090, 718-303-9090. We're on the air with Congressmember Nicole Malliotakis, and the phones are ringing already, so we're going to take one call before we get to the next question. Hi, you're live on the air.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
First, I'd like to say, Councilman, I love your every Thursday night you have great listening of your listeners, and we hear you always talking about such great stuff, everything from policing to our community, and I want to thank you for that because I really enjoy it. And I also like to thank Malliotakis for being on your show. I'm actually part of her area in Staten Island.
Staten Island?
Yes, I live in Staten Island, and I actually voted for her, and I'm so happy to have her on your show. I think it's so amazing, and it's lovely to see the Democrat and a Republican actually getting together and sounding like one person it should be. And I want to thank you both for this great opportunity for our listeners that I'm listening right now, and I'm just so enjoying it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I would like to bring out two things, if it's okay with you, Councilman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. One, I'd like to talk about the police issue that our Congresswoman was right on target with. Let's not forget about 9/11, the officers and the firemen that went into those buildings, risked their lives, and still today, those officers and firemen have cancer. They risked their lives for the lives they did not know, and they went into those buildings not knowing what would happen, and they saved so many lives. Let's not forget about also when the airlines went on the Hudson River and landed, the police and the firemen, again, were one of the first responders to help hundreds of people on that plane and saved all those lives. So let's just remember those things, and the councilwoman, she's well aware of it. I also like to say what your program started off there with the Verrazano Bridge. This is more of a question directed towards the councilwoman. We now have two-way tolling on Staten Island, and it was done by her ex-councilman, Congressman Max Rose. And right now, they're getting ready to remove the carpool for three people that we've had for many, 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 many years. I can at least say for at least 10 years, 13 years I've been living there, if not longer. They're preparing to remove that offer from the carpool for three people or more that the Staten Islanders save a lot of money on when they have three or more. And it's the reasoning is for pollution, and you have three people in the car, and they're looking to take that away as of, I think, a week from now or two. My question is, what can we do, Mrs. Malliotakis, what can we do to stop this? Because two-way tolling has brought more money now, which your Max Rose has changed it to two-way tolling. Why can't, if possible, why can't we keep that? And why are they taking it away from our Staten Islanders? And not only that, let's keep in mind that they have proven that two-way tolling is going to bring more money now to the MTA. And that needs to be addressed. And when they made this whole situation with raising the tolls again, well, they didn't speak about two-way tolling making more money for the MTA.
Yeah, thank you for that long question. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm not familiar with the Verrazano Bridge, but I'll let the Congressmember answer that.
Thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate the question because it's an issue that's very important to me. Ever since being elected to the state assembly, I've always been advocating for lower tolls, for accountability of the MTA. We fought very hard. We were big to get the Staten Island resident discount, simply because all the elected officials on Staten Island actually work together with the community organizations, the community boards, the Chamber of Commerce. We don't have that same consensus in Brooklyn. And Chaim, you may know that a lot of the Brooklyn elected officials actually want higher tolls because they feel like it subsidizes the subway system. So that is why we haven't been able to get sort of a resident discount for Brooklyn. However, the listener is absolutely correct in that the two-way tolling really brought little benefit. You may have increased speeds on the expressway by 0.1 miles per hour, which is obviously not much. Whatever traffic you lose in the morning going toward Manhattan, you gain in the evening returning from Manhattan. The one benefit would be that it generated more revenue that should have been credited back to the toll payers. So one of the things that Max Rose did, which I thought was a bad deal for the community, was that he allowed the MTA to implement the two-way tolling, but didn't actually say that extra revenue had to go back to the toll payers, either in the form of a reduced toll, a credit, or a rebate. And so I put in legislation. It's actually my first piece of legislation that I put in as a member of Congress to try to actually hold them accountable for where that money will go, because it's supposed to generate about an extra $12 to $15 million. Now, think about this. They're not only getting that extra $12 to $15 million a year now that I believe should be going back to the toll payers on both sides of the bridge, Staten Island and Brooklyn, but on top of that, they just got an $8 billion bailout, $8 billion in federal aid in the last CARES Act. They're going to get another $6 billion, most likely, in this upcoming package. And they had the audacity to still increase the tolls. So it's really insane. And what I've been saying is that to the governor, who controls the MTA board, he and the mayor, as you know, control the board, that they need to stop the tolls. They need to use that federal aid to stop the toll increases. And that's the one thing I've been pushing for. And I also want them, look, they're going to be getting probably $50 billion combined in the state of New York in federal aid. They should make a commitment to New Yorkers that they won't increase income taxes. They won't increase the property tax levy, which the mayor kind of told me last week that he doesn't intend to do that, which I think is shocking. It's unfortunate that he's going to take the federal aid, he's going to still increase the property taxes. So all these things are things that I think, they should be making commitments to the people of New York State.
Yeah, definitely. And, there was a lot of New Yorkers probably had a vague understanding about, we just had the $1.9 trillion. You had the $1.9 million COVID relief package that was passed by the House this week. And how much of that money, I know that you opposed the bill. Can you speak a little more about that bill, and can you explain why you opposed it? And I guess if it passes in the Senate, what impact would that have on everyday New Yorkers? Because
Well,
go ahead.
Well, first of all, let's take note that there's still $1 trillion left from the previous package passed in December that has not yet been spent.
Okay.
For example, in that previous package, there was $64 billion to reopen schools. New York got $4 billion, and they still haven't reopened all the schools. And CDC had estimated about $25 billion was the cost to reopen schools across America safely. So they have $64 billion from the previous package. Now they want to put $130 billion in this package. So only under a mismanaged government would it take time as much as what the CDC originally estimated to reopen our schools. So there's a lot of extra spending in here that has nothing to do with COVID. As you know, we fought and we got Nancy Pelosi's rail line taken out of there, that she wanted to pump about $110 million to fund a rail line in San Francisco. We did fight and get that removed. But when you look at the overall budget bill, the spending bill, less than 1% actually goes to vaccine production and distribution. That just shows you how bloated this package is. When vaccine distribution is the number one issue right now, if you ask a Republican, a Democrat, local leader, national leader, that's our number one priority. And the fact that it's less than 1%, that just shows you what a big bill this is. And there's so much money going overseas. They expect American taxpayers to fund 88% of the global funds expenditures on AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. There's money for Planned Parenthood there. They refuse to put in the restriction to spend that money on abortions. There's a lot happening in this bill that I don't think the average American knows, simply because the media has not reported it. They only point out the good things. Of course we want to extend unemployment. Of course we want to make sure that we're returning taxpayer money to the people in the form of a stimulus check. And of course we want to make sure our small businesses are getting support. Our theaters that have been struggling, they get support. But what did they do, the Senate? They took this bill and they actually cut the money that goes back to the people. So if you're a single mother earning $80,000, you don't get a stimulus check now. So instead of cutting the pork and the money that goes overseas, they actually cut from the American people in the stimulus check. I think that was just ridiculous. And, I think that the bill should be tailored. It should be specific to the needs of what's going on. I don't think Congress took the time to actually identify where the money is needed. And they still haven't spent the $1 trillion that is unspent from the previous packages, which is why many of us were very outraged. But what was most outraging was the process. Nancy Pelosi gave us 30 minutes. All the Republicans, the whole conference, got 30 minutes to debate a bill that is 600 pages long, spends $1.9 trillion. I got 1 minute. I got 1 minute, and I got to jam everything I had to say in that 1 minute, which is outrageous. So the whole Congress, 435 members, had 1 hour to debate such a bill that has such an impact for future generations, the debt that we're taking on.
And I don't blame you for not trusting the administration and how they put together this package. And $1.9 trillion, that's a lot of money. And I kudos to you for standing up for New Yorkers and people around the country. So I want to thank you. You have been really a voice of reason and one of the few. And as a Democrat, I could say that because, it's not about the party, it's about the person. And you really stood up for people, for Staten Islanders and for Brooklynites. And I'm honored that you represent part of Southern Brooklyn. I have a lot of friends in Staten Island, and they speak very highly of you. And as you heard, one of our last callers, the person with the long question, and which I don't understand because I don't take the bridge. But anyway, Congressmember, I want to thank you for joining us tonight, and I hope you come back soon and fight the good fight. And it's so important for us to, whether Republicans are, don't have as much of a voice in the majority, but it's important to send a message back that you fight for your constituents. So I applaud you and thank you for all the great work that you do on behalf of public safety and behalf of all New Yorkers.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be with you, and you keep up the fight as well on the city level, and we will continue to work together. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
So you just heard from Congressmember Nicole Malliotakis, a voice of reason in Congress, and I just thanked her for standing up for Staten Islanders and Brooklynites, and she's really amazing. And you know how you know when someone is really doing a good job? When you see the liberals coming after you. So that's when you know someone is doing a great job. So with that being said, we have a great continued program, but we have to take a commercial. I didn't want to have the Congressmember wait. So we'll take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Here is your host.
Come back, and you're listening to Chaim on the Radio, 620 on your AM dial. You're listening to Talkline Communications Network. I'm live in the air with my co-host, Dr. Faye Zakheim. We are now joined by two impressive community leaders representing the Flatbush Community Fund. Yitzy Weinberg is the executive director of the fund, and David Heskiel sits on their board, and they both have been at the forefront of Chesed charity in our community for many years. The Flatbush Community Fund was formed to meet growing needs for funds that they have expanded to offer financial assistance for multiple causes, including holidays, emergency assistance, food pantry, wedding assistance, and multiple other causes. Over the last several years, they have distributed millions of dollars to families in need, and that is so important now more than ever. When people are struggling to make ends meet, it's just, when you have an organization that could just give you money on hand and to say, this is for you for the holiday, this is for you to go and make a wedding, this is to help you buy clothing that people, don't have the money for. And it's just so amazing. So we're going to be listening to some of the leaders, and first we're going to hear from David Heskiel. David Heskiel, you're live on the air.
First of all, before anything, I really would like to thank you, Chaim, because there's a lot of people in the community that their voices are unheard. They're struggling. Families are struggling. Elderly are struggling. And you're constantly, during the pandemic, even before the pandemic, advocating for those in need. And that support means a lot to the community. And I just want to tell you, how much we all appreciate that. Thank you.
Back to you, David, because anytime there is a family that is in need, My first phone call is David Heskiel. And, you cannot imagine how many phone calls I receive where people just they don't know where the next meal is coming from. So I call up David, or I'll get a hold of Yitzy Weinberg, and boom, everything, you put people back on their feet. So Yitzy, you're live in the air.
Hey, hi, Chaim.
How you doing? And you're so modest, Yitzy. You like no big deal. What's the big deal? You take it day by day, and you don't realize how many people you help each and every day. How do you do it?
So again, number one, I want to thank you, Councilman, and again the one and only Dr. Zakheim. It's a privilege to be back on the air with you again, your audience, and I really appreciate the ability to be able to amplify our mission, which just talking to David is just so critical, always and especially now. It's the truth is it really is day by day. We're getting up to Pesach again, and it was on the show last year, Pesach time. And the need is incredibly tremendous, and the only way to really get through it is every person is an individual, every family is has their own story, and it's really just making sure that everyone gets the help they need when they need it in Flatbush. And this year the need is greater than it's ever been before. So it's just something that's incredibly important. David has been, always was, incredible. And it's just really, it's Flatbush just making sure that everyone over here is taken care of.
It's just amazing. How do you raise the money? And I'd like for our listeners to know that if they want to contribute to an amazing fund, how can they contribute to the Flatbush Community Fund?
So actually, I want to tell you something really, really interesting. So we're running a campaign now, the campaign website, we have a dedicated special website set up just for the campaign. Very easy to remember. It's called helpflatbush.com. And, I think the name pretty much speaks for itself. But what I want to tell you, so on that website, number one, we always want to encourage people, if you need help, if you know someone that needs help, on the website, there's an application to fill out.
Okay.
And that's number one. And number two, I'm sorry. And number two, if someone needs help, they should definitely go on the website to get the help they need. And number two, we have an incredible feature just went live today on our website where people could put in their own address. And again, obviously without any identifying information, within a 2-block radius of their house, a quarter of a mile, they're able to put in their address, and they're able to see in real-time data how many people applied in that 2-block radius to their house for this year. This is current data. This is not from previous years. It's not aggregated from multiple years. This is real data from this year. People could go on. I actually just showed it to a potential donor today. He was blown away. He couldn't believe that he knew there was a need in Flatbush, but that in his own 2-block radius there was such a need. He couldn't, it was incredible. It was incredibly shocking. So I strongly encourage everyone. I think it's really, it's something that really makes a very, very significant impact on people. On helpflatbush.com, they could go on and they could see literally in their neighborhood how many people apply for assistance and really could use their support, to make sure that they could celebrate, Yom Tov properly.
So I want to tell you something that really impresses me, Yitzy. So you have, and David, you have a lot of organizations that you hear about that they help people with food packages, they help people with funds, right? But sometimes you don't really get to see the things happening. And when I happened to go on your website because I had a constituent call me that they had an issue with buying food, and when you go on, the first icon that pops up is, do you need help? It doesn't say contribute. The first thing that pops up is, do you need help? And that's what impresses me. And that is what impresses me, because you're not asking for money first. You're asking people if they need help. If you just came on my website because you need help. And that is truly amazing. That really impresses me. So again, if anyone wants to contribute or anyone needs help, you just go on helpflatbush.com, right? Helpflatbush.com.
Correct.
Yes, great. And Councilman,
go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that. I mean, we have tremendous partners that are helping with this, like, for example, Kosher Media, where we're actually email blasting straight out to people's inboxes in the communities. Like you said, people to get the word out, to know that they could apply. They know where they could turn to. So we're doing the Instagram blast, really utilizing social media, to get the word out, people that need help, and to, people would like to donate as well. There's plenty of great people in Flatbush and all over the city that really are out there, and they're looking to help in these trying times.
It's really amazing.
Yes, that's true, and I'll add to that as well as another important element of our partnership. We have over 190 shuls in Flatbush that are part of this, that are actually on our website, that people could apply through, that they're sending out emails to their congregants, to the people on their shul list, to make sure that they know that they could apply, to make sure if they could help, to help donate, but if they need assistance, that they could, that they could get the assistance they need. We have, Baruch Hashem, we have Rabbi Reisman, Revelia Brudny, and Rav Chaim Ben Olil, Rabbi David Maslatin, all strongly endorsing the campaign. They've put out statements to that effect as well. So we've really been able to rally the entire community together to make sure that everyone gets the help they need. And Chaim, as you said, there's a tremendous amount of incredible people in Flatbush who would love to help donate to make sure that their neighbors and friends were able to celebrate Pesach in the proper fashion. So we're really just the liaison connecting the people in Flatbush who want to help with the people in Flatbush that need the help.
And it's, I just want to say, I'll be very honest with you. I asked you to come on a radio show tonight, you and David, because I know how much work you both do. I never hear a word from you asking anyone for money. And all I hear is giving, contributing, helping people. And I really want our listeners to know that if you want to help an organization to help, who actually help people and go out there and really make a difference in people's lives, whether it's before the holiday or not, to go on to helpflatbush.com and make a contribution. And I know Yitzy and David are very modest, and they don't like to go around asking for donations, so I will be asking for them. So I want to thank you both, Yitzy and David, for all the great work that you do throughout the year. So thank you for being here.
I want to hop right in with you.
No, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Chaim, you and Faye, for your tremendous work that you do all year long, and especially during the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. You're listening to Yitzy Weinberg and David Heskiel. Yitzy Weinberg is the executive director of the Flatbush Fund, and David Heskiel sits on their board. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from Dr. Faye Zakheim on our focus on mental health.
Here is your host.
Welcome back, and you're listening to Chaim on the Radio, and now we are pleased to bring back one of our most popular segments, Focus on Mental Health, with Dr. Faye Zakheim. Dr. Faye Zakheim is a beloved professor at NYU School of Social Work. She is also chair of the United Task Force non-for-profit group, as well as a leader in RAGE, Russian American Jewish Experience Organization. Dr. Zakheim, it's a complicated time for a lot of people, and unfortunately, we are hearing about many complicated divorces that have left children shattered. And I wanted to ask you to address this topic as a mental health professional, and to speak a little bit about how parents can ensure appropriate relationships are maintained with both parents during a separation or a divorce.
Okay, Chaim, let's get down to the nitty-gritty immediately.
Yes,
we don't have much time.
We don't have much time.
So let's just do it. You're
going to save the world now in 3 minutes.
Yeah, in 3 minutes, here's what I want to say. While all the world is so excited about Pesach coming up, and all the world is so excited about sitting together with their families, guess what? There's a bunch of little children who are very, very, very not excited about Pesach because they are being ripped apart by their mothers and fathers. It is the most difficult time for these children because they have parents that are not in a good divorce. They are parents that are not loving each other. And although two people can not be together and decide that they don't want to be married to each other, other, that's fine. But why do they have to kill each other? Why do they have to say terrible things to the children about the other parent? Why do they have to make the children feel responsible for something that they are not responsible for? Why do they make the children take sides? It is not fair to the children. It's not fair to a child to make a child have to choose sides. This is complete manipulation of the children. It's terrible when one parent says about another parent, oh, your father or your mother is bad and stupid, because what happens? That child starts thinking, oh my gosh, I don't really think that my parent or my mother or my father is a bad and stupid person. And if they're a bad, stupid person, then maybe I'm a bad, stupid person. They start reflecting it upon themselves. So if parents want to have good children, even if they're getting divorced, let's say they just cannot be together, that's okay, but there's no reason to impact the children. And you know what, Chaim? It's not only the impact that happens on the children now while they're living, like now while they're going from one parent to the other thinking, I'm not allowed to say this. When I come back, this parent is going to ask me questions. I have to go back. I heard these terrible things about my mother or my father. Do I tell them I'm hearing these terrible things? We're putting our little children in a position that they are not capable of taking care of. And the impact while they're young is terrible. But guess what? The impact when they get older is absolutely horrific. The trauma that is repeated for them when they get older is absolutely horrible. So I think people who are getting divorced and people that are separated in the process of getting divorced, they have to be smart, and they have to understand that children are not a weapon. They should not use their children in a way that makes the children get terribly, terribly hurt. Okay, Chaim, you have any questions?
Yeah, I was just thinking everything you just said, and I was even thinking when you have a family, when you have a husband and wife who are not getting divorced, right? You always have issues with children. Even in a nice family, in a nice environment, when parents are together and they're enjoying themselves and they have children, and there's always challenges. And now, when there is a separation or when there is a divorce, you can imagine what the impact on the child, it's even more. So I was just thinking about this, how, even if you're not getting divorced or if you're not getting separated, and we have our own struggles with our children, as is, right? Everyone has some type of struggles, one time or another, and it's just really scary. But it's very difficult.
Well, at least, Chaim, when people stay together, the children don't feel like they have to take sides so much. They know mommy and daddy are both there. So you go over to the children, you say, even though we were fighting, don't worry, we're mommy and daddy, we will never leave you. But when one parent lives in one house and another parent lives in another house, and this child is going from one house into another house, imagine how difficult it is for this child. The child feels like they have to take sides. They feel like, oh no, mommy said bad things about daddy. Daddy said bad things about mommy. Is mommy bad or is daddy bad? And you know what? It goes into the children. The children start thinking, well, if mommy is bad, then maybe I'm bad. The children don't even know whose side to take. All they want is for it to be okay by mommy's house, and they want it to be okay by daddy's house. And people don't realize, children pick up everything. They hear everything that you're saying.
Yeah,
so why poison them? Why do this to them? They're innocent victims. This is really, it's considered complete violence. It's considered child abuse to do that to a child. To make a poor little child have to decide which parent do I like more. Oh, mommy said daddy's a bad guy. Mommy said daddy's a stealer. Mommy said daddy's late all the time because he doesn't love me. Oh, daddy said that mommy is cheap. Daddy said that mommy doesn't love me. And the child starts to think, maybe mommy really doesn't love me. And these are innocent children. And other people, neighbors and friends of family, they also should stay out of it. They should realize that there is no right and wrong. There are three stories all the time. There's the mother's side, there's the father's side, and there's the truth.
Yes.
And they're all different.
And there's an end time because we have 10 seconds left. So with that 10 seconds, I want to wish everyone a great weekend and listen to the advice from Dr. Faye. And we should all get along, and we should all have happy and healthy children. So with that being said, Dr. Faye, I want to wish you a good Shabbos. I want to wish all our listeners great Shabbos, and hope to see everyone Sunday